Hi guys, it's time again for another review, and I'm really being chill around here at my room, and I want to do a review of the new 007 movie, James Bond movie, Spectre, um, that just came out. I got to see it, and this is my review. So what this movie is about what basically is closure to Casino Royale, the reboot with Daniel Craig, the James Bond reboot with Daniel Craig. So it's a closure for Royale, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and um, oh my God, Skyfall. It's directed by Sam Mendes, the same director who directed the amazing Skyfall, which is also one of my favorite Daniel Craig's James Bond. And so it ties up all of that movie, and it explains who the characters that you meet, and then some. And as you know, this Daniel Craig fourth. No, this is his fourth James Bond, and Sam Mendes' second movie, and it has Monica Bellucci and Leah Seydoux, who is a French actress. She played in Mission Impossible 4, Ghost Protocol. Yeah, and who else acted in this movie? Ralph Fiennes and the usual cast. Um, so that's basically who's in it and the plot of the movie. So my review about this movie, it is surprisingly not as good as Skyfall. I have to compare to Skyfall because it's by the same director. Um, Whereas Skyfall is epic, Skyfall is more gritty and dark and entertaining. Spectre is not that. Spectre is is just an okay movie to me. It's not a bad movie, but it's not as good as Skyfall. It's surprisingly because it's by the same director, but it's a completely different movie, different type of movie than the mood that was going in Skyfall, which is more gritty, uh, more realistic James Bond. This one is a flashback. It's like going back to the old kind of James Bond. You know what I mean? It's like more gadget jokes and unremarkable things, which is not to me, which is who is a fan of the latest James Bond. So this movie is going back on the old style of James Bond, which I find dull and simplistic, and yeah, I prefer the vibe that goes into Skyfall and the rest, and Casino Royale, which is more gritty and more realistic, and yeah, there's no problem with the acting. I think the acting, Daniel Craig is the James Bond. I think he's fantastic as James Bond. But I do, and Leah Seydoux, the heroine, is amazing. Monica Bellucci is, oh man, is underused. She had definitely underused. And Christopher Waltz, oh man, it's such a letdown when the villain is not as strong as in Skyfall. Javier Bardem, who played the villain in Skyfall, was superb, was charismatic. So when Christopher Waltz in Spectre showed up, I was quite disappointed that he had no charisma. As you know, it's not, you know, it's such a letdown on that. To me, the villain here is almost, you know, Christopher Waltz only showed up in so few scenes, and the third act of the movie, which was completely left field. Left field means out of the blue. And I'm gonna go and spoil why I need to spoil this third part of the movie, because if I say that the movie sucks at the third part, you might not understand it. So if you don't want to see to be spoiled, you can stop watching the video here. Just enough for me to say that the movie is not up to par with Skyfall. In fact, it's just an okay Bond movie, and had a bad villain, so a bad character, bad you know, motivation for a villain, bad acting. Okay, so now I'm gonna spoil why I think that is such a bad thing. They were captured by Christopher Waltz, and then somehow as they blew up the base, his base, and apparently Christopher was supposed to die, and it wasn't convincing at all to me, because it was reliance on CGI and stunts and big explosions, and it wasn't that grand, that execution of how Christopher was. They escaped from Christopher Waltz villain character, and then they fly off. They show James Bond goes up on a helicopter and flies off to London, and then almost on the instant, like they fly off to London, and then Lea Seydoux got captured, and Christopher Waltz somehow managed to create this sort of villain layout in, like, trying to, you know, when James Bond tried to rescue the Lea Seydoux character, he ended up in this place, in the old building, where, I mean, when did Christopher Waltz had the time to put all these pictures? And, you know, I mean, it was absurd, and it was a letdown that the quality of the script was so inconsistent, because you saw him die in 5 minutes earlier. I think less than 5 minutes, you saw him die, and then you end up in London, and then he captured one of the girls. Immediately he captured one of the girls, and then he managed to set up this scheme where he put pictures of Bonds in old nemesis and whatnot in this. I mean, there is some pacing issue, there is some critical failure on the third act, and I was disappointed by it. And definitely I'm not gonna buy a Blu-ray to this movie, and that's definitely my review on this. That it's not Blu-ray worthy. It's not as good as Skyfall. Definitely it's not as good as no, I'm just comparing to Daniel Craig's James Bond movie. It's not as good as Skyfall. It's not as good as Casino Royale. It's almost, I would say, I think even worse than the some Quantum of Solace, or maybe on the same level, because it's such a disappointment for me. And yes, that is my a bit long-winded review of this movie, Spectre. Surprisingly, because it was directed by Sam Mendes, who did the fantastic Skyfall, so it was a disappointment. I'm sorry it's a bit long-winded video. I just got out of the hospital, and I just want to pour my heart out, and thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you subscribe. Again, thank you for watching, guys.